When the news dropped that Ace Frehley, the legendary spaceman of Kiss, had passed away at 74, the whole rock world just went dead quiet. For decades, he wasn't just some guitarist, he was the heartbeat of a generation that learned to dream through the sound of a screaming Les Paul. But what shocked fans even more than his loss were the words that came after, a confession from Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons that nobody ever thought they'd hear. The same bandmates who once replaced Ace on stage were now calling him irreplaceable. The same voices that built Kiss's success were finally giving props to the man who helped create its soul. This wasn't just an apology, nah, it was a reckoning. A calm, emotional moment of truth that sometimes greatness only gets recognized when it's already gone. But before we get into what Paul and Gene really revealed, we gotta rewind and trace the road that led to this moment. Subscribe now so you don't miss what's coming next. The final days. The tragedy that changed everything started quietly, no stage lights, no cameras, just a late-night session in Ace Frehley's New Jersey studio. According to reports, he slipped, hit his head on some equipment, and was rushed to the hospital. What looked like a minor accident turned critical in just hours. Doctors found a severe brain hemorrhage and rushed him into emergency surgery. For a short moment, hope showed up. Ace opened his eyes, even smiled, but complications soon dragged him back into a coma. For 3 long weeks, his ex-wife Jeanette and daughter Monique stayed right there with him. They played his music softly through speakers, whispering love, praying he could still hear them. Even after doing everything possible, doctors quietly admitted there was almost no chance he'd recover. Friends said Ace had been full of life just days before, planning new songs and joking about a psychic who once told him he'd live to 100. That optimism now felt painfully real, like a final reflection of who he was, bold, funny, and unstoppable. On October 16, 2025, after nearly 3 weeks on life support, the family made the hardest call of their lives. Surrounded by love, Ace took his final breath. His 50-year journey through rock history ended, not with an encore, but in silence. AP News confirms Ace Frehley's death, age, and cause, giving facts to this moment. But outside those hospital walls, something big was moving. The band that once kept their distance from him was getting ready for a tribute nobody saw coming. Because even in death, Ace Frehley was still rewriting the story of Kiss. Paul and Gene's unexpected confessions. When the news of Ace Frehley's passing spread, fans expected total silence from the Kiss camp. For decades, Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons kept their distance, barely mentioning Ace, never calling him a friend. But within hours, they broke that silence, and what they said left fans stunned. Paul's statement was short, but hit different. He called Ace a core part of the first chapter of Kiss, and then dropped a word nobody expected, irreplaceable. Coming from a guy who always said the band was bigger than any member, that one word felt like respect, maybe even regret. Gene's tribute was even more simple. In a short recording after a private memorial, he said, "No one could have done what Ace did. We never denied it, and there's no one left to say it better." For a man known for control and ego, that kind of humility said everything. No big press. No performances. Just real talk, 2 men finally admitting the truth about the brother they lost and the feelings they buried for way too long. Then, quietly, every Kiss social profile changed to Ace's 1977 spaceman image. Under it, just 2 words, "Forever Spaceman." For the first time in over 20 years, Ace stood front and center in Kiss's identity, and in that moment, fans knew something inside Paul and Gene had shifted for good. People magazine shared direct quotes from both of them, proving the emotional truth behind it all. But to understand how deep that change really was, we gotta go back to where everything started. Origins of a legend. Before the fame, the explosions, and the painted faces that defined an era, there was just a kid from the Bronx, Paul Daniel Ace Frehley, a quiet dreamer with crazy talent and a guitar that sounded like pure electricity. In 1973, Ace walked into a small New York audition that changed rock history forever. He showed up wearing mismatched shoes, a leather jacket, and an attitude that screamed confidence without even trying. When he plugged in his guitar, the whole room froze. Later, Paul Stanley remembered, "I saw this guy walking like he didn't care, and the second he played, I thought, I hope he's the one." That was Ace, unpredictable, raw, and real. From that moment, the Spaceman was born, one of Kiss's 4 legendary personas. The silver suit, the smoking guitar, the cosmic vibe, all came straight from Ace's imagination. He didn't follow trends, he made them. His sound shaped Kiss's early albums, Hotter Than Hell, Dressed to Kill, Destroyer, giving them danger and rebellion. Songs like Cold Gin, Shock Me, and Rocket Ride became his signature, raw and electric. Even with all the explosions and show, his tone cut through, clear, alive, impossible to copy. Ace wasn't loud off stage, but under the lights, he was pure magic. His riffs weren't planned, they were instinct. Every note felt like it came straight from his heart. But as the music blew up worldwide and Kiss became a global phenomenon, the bond that once powered them started breaking. Fame brought money, but also control, pressure, and jealousy. And while Ace's guitar helped Kiss fly, the harmony behind it was already fading. Cracks in the empire. By the mid-1970s, Kiss ruled everything, platinum records, sold-out arenas, and fans painting their faces just to feel connected to the band. But behind the fireworks and fame, the cracks were real. Ace Frehley, the free spirit who gave Kiss its edge, was slowly being crushed by creative control and personal chaos. Inside Kiss, the real power sat with Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, the masterminds, the control freaks. Ace, though, was all gut, raw, emotional, unpredictable, and straight up allergic to anyone telling him what to do. "I'd walk into meetings," he later said, "and everything was already locked in." That feeling of being ignored messed with his head big time. Then 1978 rolled around. To prove they could stand on their own, each member dropped a solo album. Critics scoffed, until Ace's record became the only one that actually blew up. His single New York Groove climbed the charts, showing the Spaceman didn't need the Kiss name to glow. Instead of bringing them closer, that win made the gap even wider. Ace's confidence had the others feeling some type of way, and life on tour pushed him closer to burnout. Friends said he was burning bright, and burning out. By the early 80s, the empire that once felt unstoppable was running on stress and contracts, not brotherhood. The magic started dying, replaced by quiet grudges and boardroom vibes. And soon, the guy who gave Kiss its spark would be the first to step away from the fire. Quick pause, if you're vibing with this deep dive, smash that like button, it helps more rock fans find stories like this. The fall and the breakaway. By 1982, what everyone saw coming finally happened. After months of tension and creative drama, Ace Frehley officially left Kiss, the very band he helped turn from smoky bars into a worldwide show. There were no crazy headlines or ugly fights, just pure exhaustion. The band's experimental album music from The Elder flopped, and behind the scenes, Ace felt boxed in and ignored. Decisions happened without him, and his voice inside Kiss had faded to almost nothing. Publicly, he said it was personal reasons, but the people around him knew the real deal. Ace felt stuck in a system that didn't value his spark anymore. "You can't stay somewhere every idea gets shut down," he once said. For a guy who lived for chaos and spontaneity, that cage was torture. Leaving wasn't rebellion, it was survival. Soon after, Ace dropped Frehley's Comet, a solo project that brought back the madness and creativity that made him legendary. His guitar screamed again, wild, emotional, unpredictable. Fans loved it right away. His debut proved the Spaceman didn't need the mothership to shine. Still, the past kept chasing him. Interviews got spicy. Ace hinted Paul and Gene were rewriting the story, erasing his role in Kiss. Whether that was true or not, the pain was real, and the split was complete. But legends have gravity. No matter how far Ace drifted, fans, and even his old bandmates, couldn't ignore his pull. Deep down, everyone knew Kiss without Ace never hit the same. The reunion and the rupture. By the mid-1990s, time cooled some anger, but not the scars. Fans had one dream, the original Kiss lineup back together. And in 1996, it actually happened. The impossible reunion, Ace Frehley, Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, and Peter Criss, 4 icons side by side again, makeup shining like it was 1975 all over. For millions, it felt like rock history was reborn. The reunion tour became one of the biggest hits of the decade. Fans cried, critics clapped, and for a short, shining moment, it looked like the magic had returned. On stage, Ace was electric, solos blazing, grin playful, energy unstoppable. But behind the scenes, the same cracks that broke them before started opening again. Kiss had become more business than band. Contracts, image control, and money talks ran everything. For Ace, that structure felt suffocating. "I'm not a soldier," he said. "I didn't sign up to be watched every day." The reunion slowly shifted from celebration to stress. Every outfit, every interview, every solo had to follow a plan. By 2002, after the farewell tour, Ace was done. He left, this time for real. Paul said Ace lacked dedication. Gene said he couldn't handle the pressure. But Ace told a different story, one about mistrust and creative choking. Whatever the truth, that final goodbye ended an era. The 4 originals would never share the stage again. As the lights faded, fans kept asking the same question: how could something so legendary fall apart twice? Because in the Kiss universe, reunion was never closure, just another storm. Trademark wars and bitterness. After Ace Frehley's second exit, Kiss kept touring, but something felt off. The energy was there, the volume loud, yet fans felt a strange emptiness. The silver-suited spaceman returned on stage, but it wasn't Ace. Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons decided the character would live on, even if someone else wore the suit. For Ace, that cut deep. The spaceman wasn't just makeup, it was him, his imagination, his alter ego, his legacy. Watching another guitarist perform in that mask felt like watching part of his soul get erased. "I created that character," he said. "They can't just swap faces on something that came from me." But legally, Kiss owned the trademarks. The makeup, the logos, the visuals, they belonged to the brand, not the creators. Things got personal fast. Paul and Gene claimed Kiss was bigger than any one person, while Ace saw pure betrayal. Fans split into 2 camps, some supported the continuation, others said Kiss without the original spaceman wasn't real. For years, interviews became indirect battles. When asked if he'd return, Ace would smirk, "Not unless they stop treating me like an outsider." The tension never disappeared, time only made the silence heavier. Still, through every show, every album, every new tour, one truth stayed alive: nobody could match Ace's reckless magic. He wasn't the cleanest, fastest, or most technical guitarist. But he was authentic. His sound carried emotion, danger, and soul, the same things that built Kiss from day one. And even while bitterness hung in the air, fate was quietly setting up one final encore, one that would bring their story full circle. It came the night Kiss entered the Hall of Fame. The Hall of Fame moment. When Kiss finally got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2014, fans expected a perfect ending. The original fought together one last time, letting go of decades of drama. But instead of a fairy tale night, it became a reminder of how deep the wounds still were. Ace Frehley showed up alone, sharp suit, calm face, quiet confidence. He took photos but refused to perform. When asked why, his answer hit harder than any guitar solo. "I don't need to stand next to people who once called me useless just to grab a title I already worked my ass off for. It was raw, no filter, and straight up Ace. Paul Stanley stayed quiet and didn't answer directly, while Gene Simmons dropped a careful line, "We respect what Ace brought to the table, but we have the right to move on." For longtime fans, that hit hard. The reunion they'd been dreaming about just disappeared in a cloud of polite distance. But when Ace stepped onto that stage to take his award, the crowd went wild. Chants of "Spaceman! Spaceman!" blasted through the auditorium. For a quick second, Paul and Gene turned toward him, not mad, just calm, almost respectful. They knew damn well who the crowd was cheering for. The induction wasn't a reunion, it was a wake-up call. A reminder that Kiss's power wasn't about business or branding, it was about the chemistry of four imperfect, fearless guys who built something legendary together. The night ended without a handshake, but something had shifted. Pride started to fade, and reflection kicked in. Because sometimes, respect doesn't start with forgiveness, it starts with silence. Quick reminder, don't go anywhere, there's more coming that'll flip the way you see Kiss forever. And hey, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Quiet regrets and the 2024 podcast. As the years rolled by, the noise died down, and so did the bitterness. By 2024, something felt different. In interviews and podcasts, Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons started talking about Ace Frehley in a new way, not like he was a problem, but like he was a missing piece of their story. It began low-key. In a podcast that blew up that spring, Paul sounded more thoughtful than anyone had ever heard him. "I don't know if it's worth holding on to something that's been unpleasant for so long," he said quietly. "We shared something powerful once. Maybe that's what really matters." It wasn't a full apology, but it was close, the kind of truth that only shows up after years of space. Gene, usually the loudest guy in the room, said less but meant more. When someone asked about Ace later that year, he said, "There's only one Ace Frehley. You can't fake what's real." Coming from the same man who once backed replacing him, those words carried serious weight. Fans instantly started wondering, was a reunion finally on the table? Could the founders of Kiss actually heal? But Ace's reply was emotional and grounded. He thanked them for their words, but kept it real. Some things are better left as memories. For the first time in decades, anger turned into humility. The cold distance softened into quiet respect. And none of them had any clue that those soft reflections, those unspoken truths about what they once had, would be the last time they'd ever talk about it. Because when the music stopped, that's when the real truth finally started playing. The legacy restored. When the news of Ace Frehley's passing hit in October 2025, it didn't just mark the end of a life, it closed a whole chapter in rock history. For decades, the name Kiss stood for fire, chaos, and spectacle. But now, suddenly, the flames felt dim, replaced by something strange, silence. And in that silence, Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons shocked everyone, they gave Ace back his legacy. Within hours, every official Kiss social account switched to Ace's legendary 1977 Spaceman photo. The band's website went pitch black, with just 2 words glowing in silver, "Forever Spaceman." Fans around the world felt the emotion, this wasn't promo, this was grief. Behind the scenes, both Paul and Gene told their team to bring back Ace's performances across every digital platform. Old clips, interviews, and live shows that had been hidden for years suddenly popped back up. Internal messages revealed Paul telling the team, "Everything connected to Ace must be treated with respect. No edits. No replacements." Even Gene, who always looked at Kiss like a business first, quietly agreed. "He earned this," he reportedly said in a private meeting. For the first time in decades, every member of Kiss, past and present, stood equal in the official archives. It wasn't just an apology. It was deeper than that, a restoration. The kind of move that didn't need speeches to be understood. Ace had always been the rebel, the heart that beat to its own rhythm. And now, finally, that rhythm was being honored. The spaceman's story had come full circle, not through noise or fireworks, but through silence and respect. Because even legends need peace before they drift into the stars. This blabbermouth.net compiles detailed statements from Paul Stanley, Gene Simmons, and Peter Criss, confirming their public tributes and emotional reflections, strengthening this legacy-restored chapter. What Ace meant to rock. Ace Frehley wasn't just some guitarist, he was pure energy. To fans, he stood for something bigger than fame or skill. He was freedom, chaos, and realness, proof that rock didn't need perfection to hit hard. His playing wasn't about being flawless, it was about feeling, the kind of sound that made your heart pound even when a note went wild or a solo went off track. From smoky Bronx bars to the biggest stages on the planet, Ace carried a raw vibe that never faded. He didn't move like a celebrity, he moved like someone possessed by music. When he leaned back and let those riffs explode under blue and purple lights, the whole room changed. That's why generations of musicians, from Mike McCready to John 5, call Ace their first spark, the reason they picked up a guitar. He made flaws look cool. He made rebellion look easy. And even when he messed up, in life or career, he did it with that same defiant grin that said, "Yeah, I'm still here." To his fans, Ace wasn't just the spaceman. He was every outsider, who ever felt lost, but found a voice in music. He showed you didn't have to follow rules to make history, you just needed guts to be yourself, even when the world tried to box you in. And that's why his story matters. Because Ace Frehley didn't just play guitar, he reminded us that rock and roll is about living loud, feeling alive, and never being scared. And even though the man is gone, the spaceman still shines every time a guitar screams into the night. Conclusion: Forever Spaceman. In the end, Ace Frehley's story wasn't about fame or drama, it was about legacy. He started as an outsider, rose to become a rock legend, crashed hard, and somehow kept his soul untouched. Through every fight, every quiet moment, and every comeback, he showed one thing loud and clear: you just can't swap out the real deal. When Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons finally said he was irreplaceable, it wasn't only respect. It was them straight up admitting the whole Kiss magic kicked off with him. The riffs, the makeup, the attitude, yeah, all came from a guy who never gave a damn about fitting in, only about keeping it 100. Ace didn't just play music. He was music, wild, flawed, and impossible to forget. And now, his legend is forever. Because even when the lights go down and the amps go silent, the spaceman's sound still hits in every chord, every stage, every fan who ever felt rock's crazy, untamed soul. Smash that subscribe button for more stories behind rock's most unforgettable legends.